Good afternoon, good evening. This is Talib Kareem with STEM4US, and I am excited to be here with you and a number of outstanding leaders who are set to engage in a conversation about where we stand today as we conclude Women's History Month 2022 with respect to cyber diversity. I am honored to have a number of our leading figures from leading organizations in the cyber field, as well as a leading voice on Capitol Hill, set to join us momentarily. So stand by and get ready for an exciting conversation to follow. I'm back. This is Talib Kareem, and I am being joined by a number of outstanding guests. First, let me bring up Charles Carithers. Charles is a leading voice on issues of cyber and also national security, and also a former congressional aide and someone who knows how important it is, particularly for historically Black colleges and universities, to have the funding they need to be fully engaged, because he is a product of an HBCU, a proud Morehouse man, and he is currently also teaching at his second alma mater, Georgetown University, as a professor of national security. Charles, welcome to the national broadcast during our Women's History Month conversation on where we stand. What is the state of the cyber field in terms of diversity today? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Charles is going to be moderating this conversation. So shortly, I'm going to be turning over this conversation to him. And he is joined by a panel of outstanding leaders. Let me just introduce them briefly, and then Charles can perhaps go over some more biographical information about them. We have none other than Sharifah Masten. Sharifah is a CEO at the Bespoke, which is a national organization that's serving HR needs for technology and other sector leaders. Sharifah is also a board member of STEM4US, as is Charles. So thank you very much, both Charles and Sharifah, for your service. Next, we have Damon House. Damon House is a senior manager and leader of diversity with the Microsoft. And he is, again, one who also is very familiar with the works of historically Black colleges and universities, as he supports HBCUs in their growth of their IT and other cyber needs. So we are looking forward to hearing about Damon's work with both HBCUs as well as women leaders as we can converse and continue our conversation. And of course, we are all waiting to be joined by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee, as well as Jameel Johnson from NASDAQ. So without either further ado, and I would be remiss, first of all, before I turn it over to Charles, if I did not recognize our, first of all, our creator for blessing us to be able to be here today. And then second of all, the outstanding work of our board of directors and all of the supporters and sponsors who have assisted us to be here. One of the things that we are getting ready for coming up in a very short time is our winter hackathon, or actually our spring hackathon that's set to start on the 23rd of April. So if you have any who are not signed up, we encourage you to go ahead and sign them up today. So again, don't hesitate to go and visit our website. You'll see the link in the comment section, and go ahead and click on those, and feel free, in fact, to leave some comments or questions that the speakers have a chance to answer before we conclude our conversation tonight. So again, without any further ado, Charles, I'll turn it over to you.
Talib, thank you for your gracious remarks. Good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Carithers. principal here with Cornerstone Government Affairs. Previously, I spent 11 years in the United States intelligence community, and I spent a couple of years on Capitol Hill as a national security advisor, most recently with the House Homeland Security Committee in the House of Representatives, where I advised Chairman Benny Thompson from the 2nd Congressional District of the great state of Mississippi on a myriad of national security, intelligence, and homeland security issues. So today, in celebration of Women's History Month, we will be discussing the state of cybersecurity as we get into the richness of women public service for this glorious month. So over the past 2 years, we faced some of our nation's most serious and challenging obstacles, from the death of George Floyd to international protests that swept not only our nation, but the entire globe from the death of George Floyd, a worldwide pandemic with COVID-19, and of course, a myriad of national security issues, including domestic terrorism, cybersecurity, and the constant challenges with near-peer adversaries such as China and Russia. Our amazing panel today is going to dive into these challenging issues, and we're going to try to unpackage this for all of our viewers there. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please go ahead and submit them in the comment section of either YouTube or this platform here or LinkedIn, and we will be able to address some of those very, very, very important questions. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't give the full bio of our amazing, amazing speakers. So let me start off with Ms. Sharifah Masten, CEO of Bespoke Incorporated and a fellow board member with STEM4US. Sharifah is a proven leader with over 20 years of human resource and operations experience. She is an accomplished leader with a deep appreciation for ensuring measurable return on investment for organizations and personnel. She applies initiatives that challenge current business strategies and innovate game-changing solutions for streamlining processes and reducing budgets while maintaining high-quality service while achieving organizational goals and objectives. She is responsible for all human resources, policies, programs, services for multiple organizations. Her areas of expertise include employee relations, health and welfare, safety, organizational development and learning, diversity and inclusion and compliance. And as a consultant, she has been instrumental in integrating human resources initiatives into strategic goals of organizations. Her experience was gained by moving from junior to senior level positions while serving in the United States Army. Thank you for your service. Working for multiple offices within the federal government and leading change within international organizations. She is a member of the Society of Human Resource Management and currently serves on multiple nonprofit boards in the Washington, D.C. area. Damon House Sr. is a business program manager. He manages solutions and strategy for healthcare and education for Microsoft Industry Services. He's an experienced management professional with over 25 years of project and program management experience. Prior to joining Microsoft, Damon was a portfolio and program manager in the United States federal sector and the private sector. As a veteran of the management and operations consulting industry, he directly led the definition and implementation of cross-functional strategies, initiatives, and the evangelization of portfolio requirements for several different sectors, including telecom, healthcare, and education. He has managed marketing, training, deployment, Southwest development, and other technical teams for different companies. Damon has managed strategic planning and governance for U.S. government agencies, including the Department of Defense, Veteran Affairs, Agriculture, the quasi-federal Amtrak. In the private sector, he's created and managed project management offices and project management centers of excellence to support products domestically and internationally. Additionally, Damon is a champion of diversity and inclusion, both within Microsoft and beyond its walls. Thank you. So, Sharifah, Damon, let's just get into it. We are now 2 years removed from the death of George Floyd and the large-scale international protests against police brutality and strive for equality among African Americans. How has the impact of these events affected your industry or arena when it comes to diversity and inclusion?
I could say for me, working with multiple organizations and being in the human resources field, that it is about people. And over the past 2 years, we have seen an increase in people wanting to be recognized for who they are and what they bring to the table, and to be accepted. At the same time, we've also seen and heard about the Great Resignation. We had a lot of people of color lose jobs, along with many others, during this time. And I know for me, from dealing with people and looking to get people in jobs and keeping them in jobs, this has been a rough 2 years. Since the protests and even with the pandemic, if you look at it, there's a turnover rate of over 50% happening in this country. And so we still have a lot of people unable to get jobs, which is why retraining and upskilling into cyber jobs is, you know, it's crucial to allow them to get jobs that are, provide a living wage, not just minimum wage, but living wage, where they can take care of themselves. At the same time, in striving for equality, I think there has been, you might have heard the word affinity groups being stood up inside organizations. And that's where we are looking at putting people based on social identity, life experiences, where they can come together as a group. I see it sometimes, I want to make sure we are striving for, equality and understanding and appreciation, but also at the same time, from my perspective, when I look across what's happening, we also see that sometimes additional groups can also cause more of a divide. So it's coming up with a balance in how, in growing our diversity and inclusion efforts, that we don't also continue to alienate other groups as well.
Thank you, Sharifah. Damon, same question to you. Given everything that's transpired the past 2 years, how has the impact of all these events affected your industry or arena when it comes to diversity and inclusion?
Well, first and foremost, thank you to STEM4US, to you, Charles, Sharifah, and everyone who's listening. This showcases the need and the passion that we have in this area, and how we still have changes that need to be made. When George Floyd, that tragic situation came about, also happening at the same time during a global pandemic hit, there were a lot of things that impacted communities of color, as well as the cybersecurity industry concurrently. With COVID, a number of people lost their jobs, service jobs in retail, in restaurants, etc. There were jobs that were lost in the cybersecurity and technical arenas as well. And with George Floyd, yes, there was a groundswell of a need out there to make changes. And so Microsoft stepped up in a number of ways. First and foremost, we launched the Global Skilling Initiative, where we actually put certification programs that were free on the street in partnership with LinkedIn Learning, so that people could get jobs that were more secure, rather than just, say, service industry and clothing, retail, or restaurant sector. Project manager, customer service, a number of positions that would allow them to get onto those pathways where they would have better job security. And we made the goal of certifying 25 million. And over the course of 1 year, we exceeded that and we reached 30 million. When we take a look at what we wanted to do to improve economic viability, Microsoft put a large amount of money onto the street in support of Black partners and minority-owned businesses. It was critical that we support these sectors by hiring, by developing partnership relationships, supply diversity initiatives. And so we were able to support a number of entrepreneurship motions that are now starting to bear long-term fruit.
when we look at some of the donations that went into historically Black colleges and universities, yes, a lot of money made it into HBCUs. And so Microsoft and our partners have been working diligently with these institutions to not just pay off student loan, but to build out curriculum and new programs like cybersecurity. And I think we're going to talk about some of those later on in this session around how we can start to prepare to fill those jobs that are currently void in our sector. So this is a great first step, but we have a long way to go on our journey.
Damon, thank you for that. And you mentioned something that really struck with me, the economic impact that COVID-19 had on our society. I promised the listeners we're gonna unpackage that just a little bit later during this conversation. But thank you, Damon, for raising those very key points. You know, as a former federal employee, you know, one thing that I've noticed, especially in the national security sector, on day one when I EOD'd, when I entered on duty, that there were very few people that looked like me, and even fewer people at the mid and senior level leadership or management of these federal agencies. So this kind of brings me to our second question, right? Because without inclusion, right, diversity kind of just, you know, falls flat. You essentially just check a box, right? You need a seat at the table. So what efforts are being made to improve diversity on the boards and senior leadership in your company and elsewhere in the cyber sector? And I'll let anyone chime in who wants to address this very important question.
I would prefer to always defer to Sharifah. I know better.
Oh, no, you could have taken the first stab at this one. And, you know, from working with different organizations, I do see an increase in trying to get people of color inside the room. I also see where there's been a change is that when we're doing the recruiting process and being part of that process, one thing I saw overseas and working with NATO was they had a panel that was built of different people from different areas and different backgrounds. And it was the panel that helped choose who was being hired and coming on board. This actually increased the diversity of the staff. You know, you walk in a room and you see someone who may look like you, someone with different backgrounds. And I see some organizations doing that. When you have, if you look at some organizations, if you actually look at them, it kind of mirrors who's recruiting or who's doing that touch point of speaking to individuals. And so by increasing our diversity on the staff that is also hiring and engaging, I think that will help increase that diversity. Then in addition, if we need to have, and I'm a big proponent of having a mentor or coach when people are in jobs and having that career path for them. You know, it's one thing to get a job, but what does tomorrow look like for that person? And I think that is something that organizations are starting to do, make it part of their culture. Is okay, just because someone's doing a job today doesn't mean it can't lead tomorrow. So let's find them somebody who can help build them up, help them get on the right path to succeed and become middle management, senior management. But I also don't believe everybody needs to become a leader, but they can still grow in their job to senior positions. And so that's one of the things that I see that will help in some of the actions being taken by different organizations.
Well, and I think in our side here in Microsoft, you know, people see us as a global leader in technology, but a lot of people don't realize that the chairman of the board, John Thompson, graduate of Florida A&M University. Let's shout out the HBCUs winning where we can. We had Miss Tony Towns Whitley, who until recently was the president of our public sector business here in the United States, Miss Jackie Wright, who is the chief digital officer here in Microsoft. We believe in having minorities in key leadership positions. Charles and I share a relationship with someone in Microsoft, Mr. Fred Humphreys, who is corporate vice president and heads up our lobbying office here in the Washington, D.C. area. So yes, we do have people of color in positions of power, but that's not enough. We should not just point to 1 or 2 or 4 or 10. We need to add zeros after those numbers. And so there are a number of programs that we in Microsoft have that we are held to a certain standard. We have a diversity and inclusivity arm under the umbrella of broader HR. And it focuses on leveraging women and diversity, minorities, as well as persons who are differently abled, veterans, and thank you for your service, and making sure that they have an equal voice and that programs and daily activities are achieved by both our employees and our organization in support of them. Every time I go through a review for, how am I doing this quarter? How am I doing this half of the year? I have to identify how I'm doing for diversity and inclusivity. And every employee is held to that standard. And that's not to say that every employee meets the same level of that standard, but we're all at least pushed to keep it in front of mind. We have metrics that we see every year. They share with us and we go over them around what are the percentages of minorities, African American, Latinx, Indigenous and Native American, etc. The number of women, the number of persons who are differently able, who are hired, and the percentage of them in our employment base. And yes, we can say we hire more minorities every year than we hire majorities. But we need to be cognizant of what those numbers are and dig deeper into them. And there are, in a technology company, a lot of Asian American or Middle Eastern Americans. That's not a problem. That's a good thing. When we look at the implicit biases in artificial intelligence, we need people of different backgrounds and faiths and nationalities and ethnicities to ensure that when the technology and the AI that we use goes out and looks out in the world, it's people who are of that world who are developing those policies. But we do still need to be vigilant about hiring, developing, and making sure that we're promoting people into different positions. And then lastly, we do have a strong focus on supply diversity, both at Microsoft and then some of the work that I've also been doing through HBCUs and minority serving institutions. Women-led businesses, minority-led businesses, we need to make sure that they have a seat at the table so that they can get the contracts, so that students can see minorities can own businesses, students can see women owning businesses. These are the ways that we instill the fundamental aspects of generational achievement and wealth into our young people so that they have something to strive for.
Thank you for those very poignant remarks, Damon. Something you mentioned stuck out to me about the need for diversity in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And everyone, I just want to put an emphasis on this. Let me be emphatic here. This is very important because if you don't have diversity in your artificial intelligence algorithms, then your output's going to be biased, right? That's why a more diverse and inclusive tech field is really for the benefit of society as a whole. Sharifah, you mentioned something that really was very personal to me. You touched upon the need or the importance of, let me get it right here, increasing diversity of the hiring staff. Now, this is why this is important. Resumes that come out of the DC area schools and some of your Ivy Leagues, they're structured a very particular type of way because a lot of their professors and career service coaches came from the federal government, right? And so they're able to coach and mentor and provide career guidance for their students to kind of help shape and craft their resume to read a certain type of way, right? So I recall when myself, an alum from Morehouse College, and another colleague of mine who was a graduate of Clark Atlanta University, when we would do recruiting for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, we would be on these hiring boards and we would review hundreds of resumes. and we would rack and stack the resumes. And we weighted the resumes from HBCUs higher than our non-African American counterparts, right? It's because we are able to draw out the nuggets, the real richness of critical thinking, of problem solving, of briefing, of communicating in those resumes, because we have a different optic. And so that's why it's so important on those hiring panels, those hiring staffs, anyone who's reviewing an application process, that it comes from a diverse point of view. Because when you start looking through things through the same cultural lens, you create this, or you leave room for the creation of what I call monolithic groupthink. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there, but Sharifah, that really hit home. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's dive into some current events. Given the recent events in Europe, more especially, with Ukraine and Russia, as well as competition with our near-peer adversaries such as China, why is it important for policy and business leaders to double down on work to achieve diversity in the cyber sectors, especially at this time?
I'm going to allow Damon to take this one first, because you do work directly with a tech, in the technology arena, and then I'll come in afterwards.
Thank you, madam. So when we talk about technology, cybersecurity, etc., it is critically important that we have all hands on deck. And oftentimes people think, well, cybersecurity is, that thing the government does, or that thing that Microsoft does, but they don't realize that for their own companies, phishing attacks, as an example, can lead to issues with their company, with their school, with their county, with their state governments. Cybersecurity is something that we all need to be mindful of. And yet, in communities of color, we still have people who are scared of big data, big brother. And so those types of terms scare them and put them off the idea of going into industries like cybersecurity. When I think about the federal government, there are countless cybersecurity jobs that are currently vacant. How can we compete in that arena as a country effectively if we're not getting the best and brightest people and filling all the available jobs that we have? So this is one of the things that we do here at Microsoft. We work with a number of different institutions, with organizations, to build out cybersecurity skills. Right now, we have a cybersecurity skilling program where we're introducing the idea of cyber. What does it really mean? How can people get onto that yellow brick road to start down that path? It's one of those things where if you're not really sure about it, it seems big and daunting. It's like looking at the mountain and you go, how do I start? Well, take a step. Take another step and keep going. We also work closely with our HBCU partners. Definitely have to shout out North Carolina A&T, Grambling State University. They have very strong cybersecurity programs, and they're not the only ones. But if we don't invest in our institutions to be at the vanguard of this training, then we're always, as a community of color, going to be trying to catch up. Microsoft easily is one of the leaders in this field. We have set up boards of ethics around cybersecurity, around AI, and I could talk at length around the biases in artificial intelligence, but I want to keep this light and friendly. But we have to be mindful overall that every day we are here, somebody in another country, or even sometimes in our own, is a bad actor. And so we need to be mindful. But in that responsibility, we can also have that responsibility to organizations we work for and our overall country. So please, if you have any interest in joining cybersecurity, data science, machine learning, AI, etc., investigate your local HBCU, community college, minority serving institution, or organizations that have those kinds of training programs. We would love to have you. We can't hire enough of you.
Along with what you were saying, Damon, I did want to go to, you did mention, government jobs being out there and they're empty. People are not going for them. One of the challenges that we are seeing and this is for the government, for the private sector, or smaller businesses, is that the more experienced technical positions and the salaries. Right now, what we are seeing is that it's, you can get an offer to the table, somebody's ready to sign it, and someone else swoops in, and, there's budgets. And working for the federal government, as anyone knows, it's not an endless pot of money. If you're a GS 14, GS 13, there's limits. And a lot of people are going to the private sector or to big tech companies because of the salaries they are able to get outside of the federal government. So we need to also come up with initiatives to get people to serve their country, and take these jobs. And it's a great way to gain experience. But also, in looking at it, when you're talking about cybersecurity and working with the government, one of the things that doesn't get talked about often is how do we get people who haven't been a part of the government or the military to get that clearance where they can get that job, so that when they land that job, they have that clearance and it will help them move through. So sometimes they can graduate, but if you don't have a program or a business that's willing to sponsor you, and allow you to work on unclass items while your clearance is coming through, that's also a challenge. So I do see that as being a challenge, especially in the government sector, and also big here in DC. That's a big thing for DC, and people are not aware of how important getting that public trust or getting that clearance is in helping to gain employment. Opens other doors for you. So I also, with the cybersecurity, one of the things we have done is started increasing training, across all organizations, making it mandatory that people take cybersecurity, insider threat courses, phishing, how to identify phishing, and making it mandatory across the board so that they are armed and educated. Whether or not they're in that cyber field or not, every employee working should know about cybersecurity. And I think that's very important. And as you said, people kind of shy away from it, think about the big brother. But when we are looking at other countries and what they are willing to do to gain information from us, we have to arm, our citizens and everybody with how best to protect ourselves and our information.
Sharifah, you mentioned something. I don't want to deviate from the path of this discussion, but we have a lot of students who are listening in and watching. You mentioned being able to obtain a top secret clearance, right? So for everyone listening, in the national security arena, you tend to need a top secret clearance, more than likely a top secret SCI, sensitive compartmented information. I'll say this. If you're a young student and you're interested in a career in national security, if you're doing anything that could be perceived to be nefarious, you should just stop. If you're smoking marijuana, even though it's legal now in many states, it's not legal federally. You should stop now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the things that you post on social media. Just use this as a litmus test. If your grandmother would be embarrassed, you probably shouldn't post it. Or if it appeared on the front page of the Washington Post, this is the Washington Post test. Would it embarrass your family? If there's a chance that it would, you probably shouldn't post it. I would be remiss, Sharifah, if I just didn't mention that, because a lot of our young students, they don't know because they haven't had this exposure. That's the real richness of discussions like this. It's exposing students to not only the opportunities that exist in the federal government, but we're trying to help you get there. We're trying to give you a few tools to add to your tool chest to kind of get your foot in the door. So I know earlier, Damon, you mentioned the economic toll. So I kind of want to get into that. So COVID-19, struck a real heavy toll on so many of us, not only mentally, but economically as well, right? We've seen spikes in crime and violence throughout major cities. We've seen wages stagnant as costs of living and gas prices continue to rise. How can increasing opportunities for women and people of color to secure jobs and or contracts in the cyber and tech field help kind of address this crisis? I know I threw a lot at you both, but let's try to unpackage that.
Well, you invoked my name, so I guess I'll go first. So when we take a look at this, I mentioned some of the work that we were doing around training and skilling. It's critically important when we think about how to economically fortify a person's ability to have a job, maintain that job, and live with a living wage. For example, I'm working with an organization, the Innovation Institute for the Fan Experience. They are a new organization that focuses in on the business of stadiums, arenas, and tracks. And that service sector right there, before COVID, you could go to a ball game, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, whatever it is. And there were people who serve you drinks and bring you food and do all those things. And coming out of COVID, a lot of those people did not return to that sector. So now how can we skill those people to not only understand how to serve the food, but to move into food management, so middle management and higher up? How can we train them to have a better understanding of the point of sale systems and the technological back end behind that? It's important when we start looking at this. We should not think that everything just goes right back to the way it was. I think we were exposed as not only as a country, but as a society overall. The schools weren't necessarily ready for distance learning. Hospitals weren't necessarily ready for distance care, for virtual care. And so we need to train the next generation of digital employees who can survive in this gig economy, who can do a number of different things and do them well, maintain those jobs, maintain that housing. We cannot see the downturn and not react. We proactively have to jump in there and say, here are the things that we need to do, and here's how we can empower people in our community to do better. When we look at communities of color, that's doing better for healthcare, doing better for job training, for education, that's working together with our institutions, with HBCUs, working together with corporate partners and with municipal partners. There are so many things, but it really does start with everyone raising their own hand and saying, here's how I can make a difference. Here's how my organization can make a difference, and starting to come together and build a tapestry where we can all do that.
And, Damon, based on some of the things you said, I totally agree. And when we talk about increasing that technology and increasing those jobs, one of the things I saw during the past 2 years, and that when you talk about not being ready to give virtual care, education, remotely, those type of things. One of the other things that we saw across the nation was just how many people did not have access to strong internet, who didn't have anything other than a cell phone, maybe a small tablet, not a computer they can get on and actually work on. And, it just shows that disparaging of how, yes, certain people have it, but for those that were losing jobs, they didn't have the proper tools to be able to transition into a virtual or more technical, I'm going to say lifestyle, right? If you cannot reach the internet, and you can't have your camera on, it happens to everybody. They're like, everybody turn off your cameras, right? Because it's so heavy. And, sometimes you're not able to maintain the connection. So when we look at just, increasing these jobs and providing opportunities, we got to also look at what we can provide to help people be successful. You can upskill, you can do all these things, but if someone goes home at the end of the day, doesn't have a computer or doesn't have, good internet and can't do other things, I think that we're still setting them up for failure, because they get frustrated. When we talk about the challenges and, this whole thing, I think one thing that has come about it is hopefully to reduce the stigma of, receiving mental health, right? Mental health care is because this has been frustrating. People were, this was a time when I saw people who thought they had no hope, like what will tomorrow bring? As you said, a lot of the jobs that people were working, they didn't go back to, they didn't just come right back to, whether they were service jobs. Some people left their jobs because they ended up staying home, taking care of the kids, making sure they're getting to school, people who had different jobs outside of service. I think people also started thinking, what's more important right now? You change that trajectory of how, what does my life look like? What's important? And so, I believe in increasing, jobs for women of color and actually women and people of color. But I just think we have to do more than just a training aspect. We need to give the tools for people to continue to be successful.
Sharifah, absolutely. And, I'd be remiss if it weren't for, champions like Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who I believe may be joining us just a little bit later. Congressman Benny Thompson, House Majority Whip James Clyburn, who fought hard for broadband to be expanded to poor and rural communities. Like COVID-19 kind of showed to the rest of the country, like the lack of access that so many American citizens don't have. And in 2022, you need fast internet now, right? It's almost impossible to function from the day-to-day of society if you don't have access to fast, safe and reliable internet. Especially in an era where so many employers are offering a telework option, right? Which is great if you live in a community that's affordable, and so you don't have to come into necessarily move to your LAs, your DCs, your New York Cities super early in your career where you don't really have the capital to buy a home or even pay for rent. I promise the listeners I'm not gonna stand on my soapbox all night. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about how to kind of prepare and equip the next generation to enter this field. What kind of skills do you think should be offered in schools today to better prepare our youth for careers in cyber?
I absolutely defer to our human resources expert to lead this.
Well, thank you, Damon. I was going to actually defer to you, but I'll go ahead. I would say, for the youth and those in our schools, one of the things, I know we could say technology-based courses are very important, but one of the things I see that is missing right now, and for our youth to be successful, is we need to have we need to increase social skills. That is missing. I think some social skills, personal skills, how to articulate, when you're speaking, looking at, I know we talked about resumes earlier. In order for someone to be successful, they can't just be behind a desk and just coding sometimes, right? We all have to be able to interact with others, helping people to be able to speak. I see it a lot in the youth. They are so used to texting. They are so used to just emailing. You could be sitting at the table with them and they're texting one another. They don't know how to look up from it, to look someone in the eye, have these conversations. So when I look at youth in school, I see some of these things that I remember. I don't want to give my age away, but some of these things I learned back in school, when they were still teaching us how to type on a typewriter, right? We all been there. But these are some of the things like civility, treating people with respect. These things go a long way in helping the youth be successful when they are able to obtain a job and allow them to keep the job. And, one of the things I do want to stress when I say personal skills, I am talking about helping them understanding what you do with that first check you get, right? Creating a savings account, how to balance okay, we don't use checkbooks anymore because we have these apps, but how do you do it? How do you pay for your rent? What do you need to make to live? These are some things that we can't wait till they're graduating college to start teaching them. We need to start, when they're in high school and going into college, and make sure it's being reinforced. I know from the technology side, I know Damon, you'll probably do, have more of those type of skills, just a little, right? That they could be focusing on while they're in school. But, I know we have that hackathon coming up, our spring hackathon, the first one. I just saw those, the youth be so engaged, they were engaged in creating an app. When I was their age, I didn't know what an app was, but to see that they're able to do some of these things in high school, before they get to college, I think is very important to see how, I hate, what's the word? Like instant gratification. You could put an app together and see it run, quickly now. You don't need to take weeks anymore, or, you could set things up without coding, and go in. So I'm going to turn it over to Damon so he could talk more about that technology side of it.
I am so glad that I let you go first for so many reasons. First and foremost, I'm trapped in a house with tiny humans and they were really loud in the background. So if I had been talking, that would have been ugly. But second of all, those tiny humans, my older son is 12. He's about to turn 13 next week. And we asked him to write a thank you note to my godmother for a gift that he got at Christmas. And he literally wrote, I want to thank you for what, and no, got to ball it up, got to throw it away, got to start again. You're not writing the way you talk. And we have to get trained on writing and speaking correctly so that we understand. You brought up so many valid points. And so I'm really thankful that I let you go first. Then when we dig into it a little bit more deeply, we need to do a better job of teaching young people about the industries that they may be interested in before they get to college. Too often, students may say, I'm interested in, and my day job, I work in healthcare. So I will say in healthcare, oh yeah, I'm interested in that. But then they don't actually really hear about anything deep in healthcare until they get into college. Their majority and counterparts may already be having community service engagements in hospitals, maybe understanding what electronic health records are and some of these things. So by the time a minority student gets into college, they're already behind. They're not learning about computers. You talked about apps, the development of apps. Microsoft offers our Office 365 platform completely free to any student anywhere in the world today. Free. I graduated from Georgetown University here in the DC area. I had the opportunity to use word processing and spreadsheets and presentations, etc. So in my early years professionally, I was given a business case. And they said, okay, I'd like you to figure out the 2 to 5 year revenue projections for this business case that we've given you and give us 3 to 4 slides on how you would present that information to a senior executive. I didn't have to take the time to learn how to use Excel and how to use PowerPoint. I already knew how to use them. So then it was focusing on the data and then pulling that out. But for students who aren't learning Office until after they graduate from college, and yes, that's still happening today, Now they're at a disadvantage because they have to do the work and they have to learn how to present it. So what we need to do is we need to start reaching further down. I do a lot of work with HBCUs, and I've kind of touched on that. But I also reach out and try to establish relationships between those HBCUs and their K through 12 school districts nearby. If we want better students graduating from HBCUs, we have to have better students that go into HBCUs. If we want more students coming out of HBCUs, we have to have more students going in. And so we have to prepare students earlier so that they're introduced to things like artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, industries like healthcare and aviation. Agriculture is actually sexy. You think about farming and you go, oh, that's boring. But did you know today you can run a 40-acre farm from a condo in Georgetown or in Southeast or Bethesda? That is where we are with technology. And so we don't need students going, oh, that's boring or that's whack, or I don't want to do that. Let's show them what is cool about agriculture, where you can use drones and IoT, you can use mixed reality, and you can showcase the cool side of how technology interacts with different industries, and then get them excited about learning it while they're in college. So when they come out, they're able to be very successful in those fields.
You know, you mentioned something that really resonated with me. Exposure before college, and to their end, NSA has done a great job with this. NSA actually has high school internships and work study programs. If you just Google NSA high school, you'll be inundated with links. So if you're really if you're interested in learning more, go there. But it's very important to get that exposure pre-college, because realistically, without that exposure, you're already years behind the curve and you're playing catch up your first day on the yard. Okay, so I want to kind of unpackage this a little bit further. STEM4US, we're working to launch a program that trains and places women and African Americans in entry-level cyber jobs, and then mentors them post-placement. Do you think this type of initiative can serve as a game changer to catalyze greater cyber sector diversity, both at the entry level and later on at the senior level?
Unless Damon, you want to go first?
I can. So I've had the benefit of having a number of mentors who have helped me along with my career. I had a very fantastic mentor who helped me as I created my first business and got it kicked off while I was also still working in this sector. Black women, Hispanic, Latinx women have been a strong force in helping me to get to where I am today. Without mentors, without the proper training and guidance to tell them, don't post that picture on the gram, don't do that, keep that back and put that one with you in the shirt and the tie. Those are the types of conversations that we need to have with young people today. These are intergenerational challenges. So a parent might not know and isn't able to pass that along. And that is not a knock on our parents. Both of my parents grew up as farmers. They both in Indiana and Tennessee. They lived on farms, and they still learned what they needed to do, and they were able to pass that along to me. I'm doing my best to pass it along to the tiny humans that I'm trapped in this house with. Please send help. We have to help them to understand how to dress, how to speak, how to walk, how to talk. Not every environment that you walk into is going to be the Sizzler or the Golden Corral. You may have a job interview at a 4-star restaurant. Do you understand how to engage in that environment? And that's hard to teach. And that's the role that a mentor can play. A mentor can help you to understand, hey, you're coming into this company. The corporate culture of this company is X. Here's what you should do. Maybe you have to have a shirt and tie on every day. Maybe you can just wear jeans, but you still have to keep it professional and keep it classy. So yes, we need mentors, and mentors should start early and help to talk to students and understand what that roadmap and what their path forward can look like. Some of the strong decisions that they can make. Maybe they want to go to one HBCU because their family went there, but that school doesn't have the kind of program that that student is looking at. That decision right there could save them 3, 4, 5 years down the line professionally. So I think it's critically important. I wouldn't be here without mentors in my own life.
Sure. And Damon, you said something, and it's actually at the heart of it touched my heart, because I know when I was growing up myself, and maybe not have had so much, but I did have mentors. But one of the things I remember from being in the military is I remember having a general say to me, "I want you to start doing protocol." While today people will hear the word protocol or etiquette and be like, "Oh, it's so ancient." I can tell you it changed my life in learning that, and then being able to work with people. So when you talk about programs, it's making sure that people who come out of programs are well-rounded. They do know how to present themselves. You can still have a little bit of spiciness in your personality, but man, can you still show up and let people know you're professional? They can count on you. Because when they say that first impression, decisions are made probably within the first 5 minutes, when someone walks through a door. And if you can't look someone in the eye, or you look disheveled, or as you say, you could wear jeans. I tell people all the time, get yourself a good blazer, and, wear that blazer. It just ups it, right? You could still, have your shoes on, your sneakers, but just make sure everything, you look put together. Don't roll out of bed. I see people nowadays walking in their pajamas, and I'm like, I need you to go home. I need you to go home, and I need you to put clothes on. I know part of it is COVID, and everybody's like, nobody's going to see me, or they're only going to see the top half of me. I'm just asking everybody, please go back to dressing. You never know who you're going to meet when you walk outside your door. So I think the program that STEM4US is working on has the potential to be a bigger program that others can buy into, and I'll help it grow. But it's not just about skills. It is the whole person. And I think that's how the program, can be a game changer. They're not just getting a certificate. You can have a certificate, but if you can't make it through the door to get a job, that certificate or that certification doesn't mean anything. So I do think there's an opportunity. And I also think with that mentorship that Damon talked about, a coach or a mentor, whatever you want to call it, someone who has that individual's future, they're invested in that person succeeding, is very important. Because many people, we start things and we get discouraged. But if you have somebody champion where you're going to go next and help pull you up when you're having a bad day, I think it makes a big difference in any programs that we do.
And one follow-up, I want to stress this for every young person that is out there. I want to stress it. Do not just hang out with people who look like you, who are from where you are from, who do the things that you do. Find people who don't look like you. Find mentors that do not look like you. Find mentors that are not from where you are from. I grew up in a predominantly white high school environment. My parents made sure that I had that opportunity. And what did I do when I got to college? First thing, we're the brothers and sisters. Okay, let's go hang out. Let's go do this. And when we had classes, we were in the same groups with them. And it wasn't until my junior year when the teacher broke us up that I realized other groups are doing things differently. And that's why their grades are a little bit better. But you should have mentors that don't look like you so they can tell you different perspectives. So you're not able to say, I never heard that. Nobody ever told me that. So I just wanted to have that little follow-up. I'll be quiet again.
No. You raise a very, very, very important point. You want disparate points of views, right? Because you'll find, especially as you progress through your careers, you're going to come across individuals from different walks of life, different political dispositions, uh, people who don't necessarily think like you. But at the end of the day, what you don't want is to come across someone who has hiring authority to say, no, I know this person, and they never really talked to me. They gave me the cold shoulder. That's what you don't want. You want champions in your corner, from different walks of life. If we could just stay on the mentoring topic, can you just briefly, because we've been chatting an hour, I've been running my mouth. How have you paid it forward by personally mentoring others? It's a personal joy of mine, but if you could briefly share how you two mentor others, that would be great.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Jameel Johnson. I'm the Vice President in the Government Relations Office of NASDAQ. One of the things that I have been doing, and sometimes I think you really have to realize, and I'll take this from a personal level, is you look at your own career and you're kind of saying, have I done things in a kind of a way that has brought the kind of success that I can pass on to others? And sometimes you're not always sure if that's the case. But I think it has to be realized that sometimes mentoring is really just sharing your experiences, letting individuals know both where you have done well and what has worked for you, and what maybe you should have done differently, or that which you've learned from others who may have been more successful than you have been. So, for instance, at NASDAQ, we have an organization called GLOBE. That stands for the Global Link of Black Employees. And one of the things that we have done is decided that even though NASDAQ already had a mentorship program, that we particularly wanted a mentorship program for GLOBE members. They initially took this as just having GLOBE members mentor GLOBE members, but to go back to the gentleman's point before about different points of view, one of our concerns, particularly at that time, was NASDAQ did not have a lot of people on the officer, senior, vice president level, executive vice president level, that people looking to move up could speak to and say, how do you get to the higher levels? And so we insisted, and we reached out and said, hey, we would like this person to be involved. We would like these people to be involved in our mentoring program. We don't just want GLOBE members mentoring other GLOBE members, and that may be fine in some cases where you have, say, a senior manager mentoring a junior manager, but we have some people that may be at the AVP level who wants to be mentored by a senior vice president or an executive vice president, so they can understand how to get to that next step. So if we push for that, we got it. And as a matter of fact, even our CEO, who is very involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion, decided that she was going to get involved in mentoring two people, or as she called it, mentoring one and being a mentee of the other, because she wanted to get an idea of what the experiences were like for Black employees at NASDAQ. And we have seen that become very successful. We've seen more people move up in rank. But I think ultimately a lot of it is really saying, hey, look, take a look at your career. Where do you want to be in the next few years? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you taking control of your career? Or are you just kind of letting it happen as it goes along and seeing if somebody will pluck you out and give you an opportunity versus having a plan and understanding what are people ahead of you looking for? You know, are they're looking for someone who raises their hand and says, hey, I see an opportunity to help you with your work. I want to do that. Can you teach me? Letting them know, being more visible. One of the things I've done as a former co-lead of GLOBE is try to encourage some of my fellow Globe members to take leadership positions even in Globe, because it brings about visibility. It does. What I've seen it do is two particular things. One, it brings about visibility. You end up meeting more people in the company than you thought you might. Two, you end up meeting particularly a lot more of the senior members who may not have been aware that you were there. And three, it causes you to have to manage your time better, because you have to do your regular job, plus do the activities of Globe, in many cases lead them. And it also strengthens your leadership ability, because now you're putting together a team where you may not have been supervising many people, but now maybe you're leading a team in Globe to get a project done. So it strengthens your leadership skills. So this is some of what we're doing at NASDAQ, and some of what I've worked on, particularly with my colleagues.
Jameel, thank you so much for those kind words, and of course, thank you so much for joining us. We know you're extremely busy. Very, very, very happy to have you here. So welcome.
Thank you.
I got a couple of questions from the field that I would like to throw out to the panel, and I think they're amazing questions. The first, how important is networking, and how do you network in a virtual environment?
I'll start if you'd like me to. Well, first, the initial question: how important is networking? People can't reach out to you. People can't offer you opportunities if they don't know you. That's really the bottom line. You have to be visible. You have to be able to demonstrate your skills to people. You've got to be able to develop relationships with individuals who can provide you with information, advice. And it's also very true. Matter of fact, even speaking with my CEO, she said a lot of her early mentors were not people who looked like her. But the way you do that is you go up to people and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. It could be within your company or external from your company. Within your company, you say, hey, I'm so-and-so. This is what I do, the department that I work in. I would love to know more about your business unit and what you do. That shows, hey, there's somebody who has interest. Now, in a virtual environment, obviously it's more difficult. Maybe because I'm a little old school. We're used to the handshaking and let's get together for coffee. Let's do those kind of things where you get to know each other personally. It's a lot harder to be kind of impromptu virtually. But the fact of the matter is, there are a number of events that go on during this place. I recently did something with the Columbia Black Business School Association. We've done things with Greenwood Project. And then what happens is, I find that after I do those, all of a sudden my LinkedIn page starts blowing up with invites of people who want to connect with you. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of social media out there, but from a business point of view, I found LinkedIn to be one of the best. I'm able to find people who have similar interests that I am. Sometimes I meet people and I use LinkedIn to go kind of check them out a little bit, check out their background. And I have, organized meetings with individuals based on linking up with them on LinkedIn. So, use those tools.
Sharifah?
And I agree with you, Jameel, in doing that networking. And in the virtual, I found that some people do the networking events, but they never turn on their camera, and that's how you can have a more personal connection with people you are meeting. Sometimes if we can't meet in person, I still send out a link to say, hey, I'm happy, join me at this link. I think it's very important. It gets us out of our comfort zone, those of us who come from a different era, but, I've also been on meetings where I never see the person's face. So I never get that personality or get to build that connection that that banter. It goes a lot better when you can see the person. So I think it's very important that if you're doing virtual, have your, even if it's just a headshot, comb your hair, get out there, meet somebody. It's very important. And as you said with LinkedIn, I I am learning. Because of some of my jobs, I don't do a lot on social media. I wasn't doing LinkedIn. And when I got into this program at Wharton, the first thing they said was, can you log into LinkedIn? Because it had been so long. And I logged in, and I can tell you I started getting all these hits from people like, Sharifah, I didn't know you were on LinkedIn all these years. And I was like, because I've just been on the background, log in periodically. But what an amazing thing to see how many people reached out. I made one post and just people just started coming out the woodwork, like you said. So I do think it's a great way to meet people that you are in your organization or outside your organization with different interests, or, to help you grow your network.
Damon?
Well, I'm just going to be very thankful that everybody's using LinkedIn, Microsoft subsidiary. So appreciate that. Really appreciate that. For all of you out there who believe that you're going to do networking on the gram, on Facebook, on Twitter, no, it's not about followers. It's not about how many people are tagging your posts and saying, oh my goodness, that person's living his best life or her best life. It's about you finding people who are in the position where you want to be and saying, how do I get there? What's the path? How many years do I have to allocate in my life to get where you are, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a senior executive? It doesn't happen overnight. And so when you go to an event, shake hands, say hello. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Thank you. Please take advantage of a potential mentor's offer to say, hey, look, I'd be happy to talk with you. You never know where that's going to go. They might give you your first job. They might give you your last job. And it might be the best job you've ever had and you never want to leave. Find out from them. Ask deep, penetrating questions. What makes you happy? How do you have a work-life balance? How would you suggest that I have a work-life balance? The worst thing that you can do is you can engage with a mentor and you just meet with them on once a week or once a month and you go, what's good? So what I got to know this week? Come with an agenda. Talk to them. Say, I'm interested in learning about this. I've done some research. This is what I found. Here are my experiences. I would love to learn more about your experiences so I can tweak what I'm doing to be more effective. Come to them with real life scenarios. I personally have had mentors and sponsors, and that's a whole nother conversation we could talk about what the difference is. But I have found joy myself in mentoring people in different arenas. So I've mentored college students. I've mentored student teams, innovation teams. I've been a judge on innovation competitions. I have mentored minority-owned businesses and those entrepreneurs. And I've mentored high school students to say, hey, each of you is at a different place in your life. And you may not all be going to the same journey, the same destination. But here are some keys that you can absolutely take away. If you can have a firm handshake, you can dress and speak articulately. You can use words like please, thank you, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You are much more likely to succeed than if you try and bring what you're doing on the street into the corporate boardroom.
Thank you for that, Damon. And I would like to add, so as the country starts to open back up and we're starting to have more and more in-person events, get some business cards. Sometimes your school may be able to give you business cards, but for $17, you can get 100 printed out, right, with your name and your email address. And make sure your email address is appropriate. First name, last name, nothing too wild, nothing too crazy. On the virtual side, I think the one thing that really works in your favor is that your students. There will be a reluctance for anyone to tell a student, no, I don't have time to talk to you, right? Just get in the habit of not being bashful and very, very politely reach out, do that cold call message on LinkedIn and reach out to that individual and say, hey, you are in a field that I'm interested in. I'm a high school student, or I'm a freshman or a sophomore at this college. would you have 15 minutes for a virtual coffee? And I guarantee you the success rate will be fairly high for a very positive response to get that 15-minute virtual coffee. So that's kind of like what you want to get into the habit of doing. We have one other question from the field. I know we've been speaking for an hour and 15 minutes, but I thought this is very, very, very important. How did you get your foot in the door to start your career? Sharifah, let's go with you.
That's a very good question. I will say, and you talked about it a little earlier, I joined the United States Army. From where I grew up and sort of if I was to stay there, I knew I needed to get out of the city where I was to make a change in my life. And the Army afforded me that opportunity. But what it also afforded me was the opportunity to do different things than I thought I was ever going to do. And I will say I had great mentors along the way that told me at one point, don't worry about what's on your collar. Worry about the job you're learning and the experience you're gaining. Because once you leave the military, that's going to help shape your career. Don't worry so much. They always say it's your pay grade. So I used to step up and take on additional responsibilities, do jobs I never thought I would do, but I had a can-do attitude. Because the only thing I kept thinking was I need to be successful so that I can break a cycle. And so I will say the military was a big help to me in getting to where I am today. Even starting my own business, I still work with the government. I've traveled the world, but it was me taking that leap of faith and doing something I wasn't sure. I know we all think about what can happen, if there's conflicts and things like that. But what I also felt was that it was my country, and I would never regret serving my country. But at the same time, I gained valuable skills, and it also helped pay for my education. So that was sort of how I got to where I am today. But it was also, as I said, great mentors who saw something in me and helped pull me up and had me try things I never thought I'd do.
Jameel, let's go with you next.
Sure. I will tell you, when I left college, I was looking for a Wall Street job. That was my number one thing. I was interviewing with financial services companies. But the interesting thing was our Congress member in the district that I lived in back then in New York had just died. So there was a special election coming up. And there were individuals I knew, my mother included, obviously, being the most particular one, was working with a Democratic club and wanted to support this minister for the congressional seat. So she said, why don't you go listen to him and see if you want to be involved in the campaign? So I did. I liked what he had to say. I was big into economic development because I had a degree in economics. So I worked on his campaign. Ultimately, he won. And I never thought about it after he won. I was like, congratulations, good luck to you. I'm still trying to find my Wall Street job. I ended up doing a stint with the IRS and then got a call from Morgan Guaranty Trust for the Wall Street job I was looking for. But then someone came to me and said, hey, the new congressman, whose name was Floyd Flake, is looking for staff. Are you interested? So I said, sure. And I did the interview. They were particularly looking for someone from our area of the district. And so, they ultimately offered me the job. And even though I got the Morgan Guaranty Trust job too, I decided that maybe working for the congressman, I could help my community more. And that's how I got, that's kind of how I got started on the path that I ended up being on. And for those who don't know, I'm a lobbyist for NASDAQ. But the interesting thing was, we were working on the campaign. Some of the older people who were able to give me advice said, hey, being politically involved is one of the ways you really get to meet, a number of people in power and make connections that can help you. And it certainly has.
Thank you for that, Jameel. As a fellow lobbyist myself with Cornerstone Government Affairs, I can tell you that, getting involved in political activity, your network expands at least tenfold. At least tenfold. Damon, let's round that out with you.
So I had one of those interesting journeys. When I was in college, I was doing record promotion because it got me into clubs and it was fun. And then one day after I graduated, I realized I needed a real job. I had to actually have a job that paid real money so I could do things. And this is where I date myself. I took a job as a temp. And for those of you who are too young to understand what that is, I see some nods. It basically now you might call it a contractor, but I was on a week rate. So I was working by the week, and I was in the mailroom. And as I was working, there was a position open in marketing, and that was where I had my degree. And I said, oh, this would be really great. This is for a telecom company. I'd never heard of them, but they were paying me by the week. Let me go see if I can get an actual job. And I interviewed, and they said, you know what? You are fantastic. We love you. We really already picked the person that we want, and we're going to hire her. But if you can keep working in the mailroom, we anticipate we're going to have another position open in about 3 or 4 months. So why don't you stay there? And then as soon as that position is open, we'll bring you in. So I said, sure, no problem. And it turned out that mailroom was also their printing center. So I would take home manuals about what telecom was and how also Unix system administration and just random manuals. And as I was walking around, taking the old mail cart from around the offices, I had an executive assistant just speaking to me one day. And she goes, do you know anything about Unix administration? And I had seen this manual. I hadn't gotten through it. I said, yes, I do. And went home and read it. And the next week, they gave me an interview for a position. And because I put in the work proactively, I was able to get a position. It was still a temp, but I was at least a foot in the door. I was out of the mailroom. And so there did the best that I could do. And every day I went home and I read more and tried to learn more about what it was that I was doing. And then I did something crazy. I love sports. And so I joined the company softball team. And I was pretty good. And so they embraced me as a good player. And then it was about 6 months later, and we found out that there was going to be massive layoffs at the organization. And the woman who had taken the position that I was up for was let go. And my position was also let go. But because I had done a good enough job in my time there, they gave me an additional 4 weeks to find something with the company. And because of that Unix system administration that I had done, I got a job in customer support. And then moved on from customer support to be able to do training, where I got to travel the world and train people and kind of went from there. Oftentimes we look at these jobs and we say, well, that's beneath me. That's not the job that I need. No, I need to have a corner office, and I need to have a door, and I need to have a title. I didn't care about those things. Give me an honest shot where I can show what my hard work can do, and let me earn it. And I was able to make that opportunity. And I think that you heard that from some of the other panelists. Don't just, kind of poo-poo the idea of taking this job or that job. Do the best that you can. Somebody is always watching. And when you do your best, they will reward that.
I will share how I got my foot in the door, and I really appreciate everyone's remarks here. It all stems back to the previous question. It was networking. So when I was in grad school at the Harvard Kennedy School, and I was part of this terrorism discussion group, and this is at the height of the Iraq War. It was a student-run, student-led graduate school discussion course through the various schools throughout Harvard. And we met weekly, and once everyone broke and went back to their dorms or their apartments, me and this national security fellow from the Defense Intelligence Agency, we would grab food. And we naturally built a relationship. Every week we would have dinners, because after the discussion, everyone would go home, we'd hang out. And after a few months, he said to me, hey, would you ever think about doing some counterterrorism work for the military? I said, yeah, I'd be real interested in that. He said, when you get back to your apartment, shoot me your resume. And I'm not embellishing here. I did just that. And the next afternoon, his boss called me on the phone. and said, hey, Jeff said that you're pretty smart, you're a good guy, I'm going to give you a job. And 2 weeks later, my conditional offer came via FedEx. This is when conditional offers still came in the mail. Mine came via FedEx. I did not have to interview. I did not have to apply to USA Jobs where resumes kind of go to die. It's like the black hole of resumes. I was hired purely off of networking and organically fostering a relationship with a government employee. And so I think that just really reinforces the importance of networking, because you never know who's looking at you. You never know where your next job's going to come from, and you never know who's going to vouch for you. So we've been speaking here for almost 90 minutes, and we just have one more question. I promise. What advice would you offer younger people in succeeding, particularly in the cyber sector? And what advice would you give your 17, 16-year-old self? Jameel, let's start with you.
Cyber sector. Well, the interesting thing enough is that NASDAQ is known as a financial services company, but what we really are is a financial technology organization. We're not on the buy side or the sell side, but we are the platform that allows the buy side and the sell side to come to take together. We're also one of the largest sellers of trading technology globally. And so a number of other exchanges actually run on that NASDAQ technology. I think what I would say to someone who's really looking to get started in this, it's kind of funny because when I actually went to college, my original plan was to major in computer science. But I'll be honest with you enough, the amount of math I had to do was like, okay, we're going to change to something different. All right. So, you've got to consider, I would say, what your strengths are. But I think one of the great things is that there are many things that you can learn online now to get you started, to make you familiar with a lot of these issues. You can start, you don't even have to, like when I was a kid, you had to first start learning computer programming and things like that in high school. And only maybe a couple of people, even on this panel, remember punch cards. So I'm talking about, we're going way back. But now you can learn so many things as a much younger person. There are so many programs out there. There's things like Girls Who Code. There are summer programs to help you start these things. So if you find this as an interest, you can go to one of these programs, during the summer, during the after school, to really get an idea of, is this something that you really like? And I think it also has to be understood there are so many aspects to computer science and technology. You may not be crazy about one, but you may like another one. There may be cybersecurity, it may be things like penetration and testing. It may be programming. There may be the hardware parts of it. You can figure out which one you like and then focus that one in school. And then you look for the internships, because this has become such a, everything that we do is technology related now. We can't bank without it. We can't have an online conversation without it. And so these are the jobs that are truly in the demand. So the number of internships available for them is coming up. So you can get an idea of what a company actually does in this area, and develop the relationships in that company, because many people, they get into an internship, and particularly if they're in their years of rising senior, say over the summer, that company may be looking to hire them. And so if you ask me, now you talk about my 16, 17-year-old self, there's a whole lot of things I would have told myself if I could talk back to that young man. Career would just be a part of it. But I probably would have tried to get myself to understand the value of planning your career. Sometimes you just take advantage of opportunities as they're there. Other times you lay out a path for yourself and where you want to be at a certain time. And I find that the people who are most likely to rise to the top are people who have planned that career, because they kind of know, I need to be here at this point if I want to ultimately reach this other level. So they kind of know where they need to be at a certain time. And those are the people that will rise to be executive vice presidents, CEOs, or have their own successful venture. So I would say learn to plan your career.
Thank you. Let's go with Damon next.
So I would be remiss if I didn't start by saying to all the teachers and the educators out there, please stop telling young women of color they can't do it. Cyber is the realm for everyone, and we need more women in these jobs. I will tell the young brothers, the young men who are on this session, who are listening, you better get out of their way, because women are coming and they are going to start dominating this field. I genuinely believe that. They have been underrepresented in technological fields for too long. But what I have been seeing in HBCU's innovation programs, working with NASA, working with the Department of Energy and others, the sisters are bringing it. And I'm really excited by the creativity that I've been seeing. And I really want to see more of that. When we talk about cyber, and we've kind of touched on a number of facets of it, but don't just think about it as I got to go code or I got to go do X, I got to do Y. There are so many jobs within cyber. As an example, people think Microsoft is a technology company and you go, oh, okay, so I have to be a cyber expert to do that. No, we hire lawyers. We hire accountants. We hire farmers, because the blockchain for using the blockchain for the intelligent supply chain is critical. And that's cyber. That's cybersecurity. There's cybersecurity in healthcare. When you look at electronic health records, HIPAA, GDPR, there are encryption standards there. And for a lot of these industries. So you don't necessarily have to say, well, I have to go to NHS, or I have to go to DOD, or I have to go to, any one of these organizations. Find what your passion is. And you could probably find cybersecurity there. And just make it work for you so you enjoy what you're doing. And when it comes to talking to my younger self, first of all, I'd smack him upside the back of his head. And I would tell him, try as hard as you can every minute of your day, because it's a muscle. It was something that I didn't realize until I got a little older. Working hard and putting in that maximum effort every day, you get used to it. And then you realize it's not that hard. I can do it. And then you do it a little bit more and you realize, okay, and I'm seeing the gains and the benefits of that. And then pretty soon you realize, wait a minute, I'm a senior executive, or I own my own business, because you're used to doing the things that are hard, which makes your life easy, rather than only wanting to do the things that are easy and then the rest of your life is hard. So just go for it. And as long as it's keeping you on the right path, do it to the best of your ability.
Thank you, Damon. Sharifah.
I think, as you talk about what advice you might give, and I'm going to take this on from being a woman and being a woman of color, and hopefully people see me as a successful in both, in that realm. One thing I will say is that for women and people of color, you deserve a seat at the table. It is something I worked my entire career for, to be an executive, to be able to walk in a room and articulate my thoughts and to be heard. And I just want to stress that you deserve to feel that way, that you are successful, that people trust in your knowledge, trust what you bring to the table and want to work with you. Don't be afraid. And that's something I still struggle with today sometimes, going into a room and being the only female at the table. The other thing is, you are capable. Don't let failures keep you back. Use them to move forward and understand that we're not all successful on the first try. We are going to have setbacks, but it's what we do with those setbacks that's going to help us move forward and help us be successful. And Damon said, for women getting into the tech field, it has been mostly male dominated. However, the door is open, the window's open, walk through. Take a chance. We are no longer we no longer have to just be based on, raising a family or doing more domestic type work or customer service. Women have a lot to offer and can do the same thing that our male counterparts can do. And so that's, one thing I always want to stress is that we can be successful, and you must believe in yourself, and surround yourself with people who are invested in your future as much as you are, because that's how you're going to succeed. They're going to help pull you up. For my younger self, I would say if I could do some things, is not to dwell on negative things that happen as much, acknowledge them and look at the way to move forward. And then being a woman and leading, I do want to say being a leader is something not everybody's meant to be a leader. Everybody's not meant to. However, if you want to be a leader in any organization, I just want to stress 2 words: servant and empathy. And let those be the base of leadership. It's not about you when you're a leader. It is about those you are leading and how you get them to be successful. Because as a leader, you are successful when those you are leading are successful. Their success breeds my success. And there's no way I would be here today if it wasn't for the people I've worked with throughout the years. It wasn't for the people I continue to work with. I can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone. So remember that. And that's just something I just really wanted to stress in that leadership, is to take care of people. And I know my background and working with people in human resources. I don't care how you look at it, no matter if you're in the tech field, service field, anything else. We are human beings and we are people, and we need to take care of one another and help one another be successful.
Sharifah, thank you so much for that. And on behalf of STEM4US, I would like to thank our amazing panel for this just amazing and timely discussion. Sharifah Masten, Jameel Johnson, Damon House, thank you so much for your time, for your insights, for your candid remarks. This concludes our discussion on the state of cybersecurity, diversity, celebrating Women's History Month. I will now turn it over to the STEM4US Executive Director, Talib Kareem. Talib?
Well, this has been, I echo what you just said, this has been an amazing conversation. And I want to, again, recognize our fellow board member, Sharifah Masten, who a year ago, while we were in the midst of the pandemic, challenged us to really use this, month for Women's History Month, as a chance to talk about diversity in general. And I think she was spot on. Again, this conversation, particularly talking about the jobs and the mentoring and the training that STEM4US is seeking to roll out, is, I think, a part of the core foundation for bringing about a solution, both to the conflicts that we have here in our streets in the United States, as well as, I believe, ultimately, conflicts around the world. So with that stated, again, I want to congratulate our moderator, Charles Carithers, from the Cornerstone Government Relations Group, Sharifah Masten from Bespoke, Damon House from Microsoft, and of course, our brother Jameel Johnson. Jameel, he is known very fondly by members of the STEM4US community, as he was oftentimes hosting our Black History Month program in his office. And we miss that, sweet tooth food and the fellowship that we used to be able to enjoy there with you, Jameel.